So in the last movie, we used the new File API within Apollo to create a simple HTML editor. In this movie, we're actually going to add a live HTML preview to that using some of the new HTML functionalities within Apollo. So before we start adding some new code, let's just look at the application again really quickly. So I'll click Run by pressing the Run button on the FlexBuilder toolbar. And you see our application launches. We have a field here to add and edit HTML, and then we can save it on our desktop with the specified file name. So we actually won't go through all that right now. Let's close the application by clicking the Close button. So in order to add HTML, we actually need to do two things. One, we need to add an HTML field to be able to view the HTML, and then we just need to add a couple of lines of code to hook up the HTML we're typing in to the actual HTML viewer. So let's switch over to Design View by clicking the Design button in the editor. We need to resize our text area control to make some room for HTML control. So let's just minimize this some. And with the text area control still selected, switch to the Properties panel and to the Constrain options. In this case, we don't want it to constrain to the bottom anymore. We just want it to always take up this amount of height. So we'll just uncheck the bottom left box. Now we can add our HTML control. So switching over to the Components view, scroll all the way down to the Apollo folder. This folder contains Apollo-specific Flex components, and these are actually installed when we installed the FlexBuilder extensions for Apollo. So we're going to click and drag the HTML control into our application, position it right under the text area, and let's just size that and just position it so it's flush. There we go. And then with the control again selected, go over to the Properties panel, and we just want to set the constraints. So in this case, we do want to set it to the top and bottom so the HTML will take up most of the space. While we're in the Flex Properties panel, scroll to the top and we want to give it an ID so we can reference it in ActionScript. And we'll just call it HTML. So press Enter, so that's saved. So now let's test this really quickly just to make sure that the resizing works. We can go to Run and Run HTML Editor. And you can see here I forgot to save the file. So that's okay. We can just click OK. It'll save the file for us and then launch the application. And you see here, my text area is smaller. You don't actually see the HTML field right now because there's nothing in it, but that's okay. Everything's working correctly. So let's close the application. Now, all we need to do is when the user types into the text area field to add HTML code, we just want to copy that HTML into the HTML view so we can see a real-time rendering of it. So on the text area control, we'll listen for the text input event. This happens whenever a user types text into the field, pastes it in, basically whenever the text change. We'll say on text input, and this will be the function that's called when the text in the text area changes. We scroll back over, get it on screen. And now we're going to create a new function. Again, we're in our script block within MXML and type in private function on text input. And again, this is just some simple Flex and ActionScript. If you're new to Flex or ActionScript, or some of this is a little more advanced than what you're used to, check out some of the movies on lynda.com for introductions to both Flex and ActionScript. So now we have our text input function. So whenever the user types into our HTML editor, this function will get called. All we have to do now is copy that HTML into the HTML control. And we can do this by typing HTML, and then there's a property called HTML text, which is basically say, take this text and treat it as HTML. And then we just need to grab the text from the text area. So the ID is input field. We'll just say input field. .text, and that's really all we need to do. So let's save this just to make sure we don't have any errors. We'll save it. Again, if there are any errors, it'll show up in the Problems panel. We don't have any errors, so now we can run this and test it out. So go to Run HTML Editor. It opens up, and you see, again, we don't see anything where the HTML should be yet because we haven't typed anything in, but let's type in some HTML now. So we'll say HTML, and add a body tag. And then I'll add a header one like, hi, this is live. And let's close the H1 tag. And just to show that it's real HTML, we'll put in a paragraph tag. And you can see as we type this, it's all being rendered within the HTML control that we've added. And this is all possible because Apollo has built-in support for HTML, and Flex Framework provides controls that make that easier to use, where you can actually embed full-featured HTML within your Apollo application. So that's all it takes to build a simple HTML editor with live preview in Apollo. In our next movie, we're going to look at how to debug and test your application to work out any of those kinks before you deploy it.